She should have kept her mouth shut if she didn't want trouble, Vivian Caraway said, her manicured hand flicking the violation notice against my chest like I was some delinquent tenant instead of a homeowner. Your wife's already causing a scene, detective. Maybe teach her some manners before my board votes to fine you again. Her perfume hit like cheap power, strong, invasive, and impossible to ignore. I didn't answer, not yet. The sound of her suntanner's laughter echoed from his idling sports car at the curb. He leaned out the window, grinning. Relax, Mom. Maybe next time she'll learn not to talk back. My wife, 7 months pregnant, was standing behind the screen door clutching her belly, shaking. That's when the switch flipped in my head. You should know, I said quietly, taking the notice from her hand. This porch is under my jurisdiction now. Vivian frowned, confused. Your jurisdiction? She repeated. I turned the paper over, exposing the HOA code section she cited. This clause you keep misquoting was written for detached additions. A porch swing doesn't qualify. You'd know that if you'd actually read the bylaws instead of weaponizing them. Her smile faltered for a second, but she recovered fast. We'll see what the board decides, she said. We don't take kindly to confrontational homeowners. Before I could respond, she turned toward Tanner, snapping, Come on, sweetheart! He revved his engine loud enough to drown the cicadas. I didn't flinch. I just looked at him once, long enough for him to understand I'd already memorized the plate, the smirk, the way he leaned too far over the steering wheel, trying to look powerful. Go ahead, keep driving, I said evenly. But remember, some of us write reports that don't disappear. If you've ever had someone threaten your peace because they think your silence means fear, stay right here. What happens next will remind you why standing up matters. Subscribe if you've ever had to fight for your family's safety. Because trust me, this one hits home before it ends. My name's Cole Harkins. I've served in law enforcement for 15 years, most of that time chasing people who thought the rules didn't apply to them. I thought retirement in Cypress Ridge Estates would mean quiet evenings, not HOA summons and personal attacks. But I built that porch swing for my wife, Lila, with my own hands. Every bolt, every plank, sanded smooth while she hummed to the baby she's carrying. I wasn't going to let a woman with a title and too much idle money decide what peace looked like in my home. The swing wasn't just decoration. Lila spends mornings there because her blood pressure spikes when she walks too far. The doctor said sitting outside, getting sunlight, helps stabilize her heart rate. That's why the swing matters. That's why this violation cut deeper than paperwork. It was a threat wrapped in legal jargon. Vivian knew exactly what she was doing. She'd seen the medical transport parked in our driveway. She'd seen Lila's belly, the way I helped her down the steps. And still she came with a notice and her smirking son in tow. I could have cited her right there, for harassment, for disorderly conduct, but I didn't. Not yet. I've learned something about people like Vivian Caraway. They don't stop because they win. They stop because they get exposed. She ruled Cypress Ridge through fear, fines, and gossip. But she made one mistake today. She targeted a cop's wife, and she did it on record. As Tanner's car sped off, I stepped back onto the porch and looked at the swing. It swayed gently in the humid air, the faint squeak of the chain cutting through the silence left behind. Lila opened the screen door slowly. Her eyes were wet, red around the edges. She called me a liability, she whispered. Said maybe people like us shouldn't live in communities like this. I clenched my jaw until it hurt. She's testing boundaries, I said. And she just crossed mine. The notice crumpled in my fist. I looked at the HOA letterhead, at Vivian's signature, scribbled like a signature of ownership over other people's lives. That's when I realized this wasn't about a swing or rules. It was about control. She believed her money, her connections, even her son's arrogance could silence people. But what she didn't know was that everything she'd just done, every word, every motion, was caught by the door camera I installed myself, synced straight to a secure drive off-site. That's the part she'll regret. She thought she was above the law. She didn't know the law lived next door. I replayed the footage that night on my laptop, frame by frame. Vivian's hand striking the notice against my chest. Tanner's grin from the driver's seat. Every second recorded from the porch camera I'd wired into a secure off-site feed months earlier, long before I ever imagined needing it. The timestamp glowed clear, another entry in what was about to become a growing file. Lila sat curled on the couch behind me, a blanket over her legs, trying to steady her breathing. She hated conflict, but she hated being dismissed even more. "She'll come back," she whispered. "She always does." I nodded. "Yeah, but next time, we'll be ready." By morning, Cypress Ridge Estates had turned into a stage. HOA Inspection Day. Vivian's minions, 2 board members with clipboards, moved from lawn to lawn in matching polos like storm chasers. They'd skip some houses, linger at others. Always the same pattern. People who stayed quiet got warnings. The ones who questioned fines got photographed. I watched from the end of my driveway, coffee in hand, as they stopped at my mailbox, scribbled notes, and snapped a picture. "Mailbox slightly tilted," one muttered. "Violation notice probable." The absurdity of it. It would have been funny if it weren't part of something bigger. This wasn't about mailboxes. It was about control, compliance by exhaustion. I'd seen it before on the job, from petty officers in small precincts who mistook authority for dominance. They pushed until people either broke or fought back, and Vivian had built her own suburban version of that machine. As they moved on, my neighbor across the street, an older man named Whitaker, shuffled down his driveway. "Morning, detective," he said quietly. "You're getting the treatment now." His voice dropped lower. "They fined me $200 last month for leaving a hose out. My wife's been too scared to attend meetings since." His eyes flicked toward the clubhouse at the end of the cul-de-sac. "Nobody stands up to her anymore." That was the first crack I saw in the illusion, that perfect manicured calm. Behind every trimmed hedge was resentment waiting to breathe. "Appreciate the heads up," I told him. "Keep your receipts." He smiled weakly, like someone remembering what defiance felt like. By noon, another email landed in my inbox from the HOA board. Formal notice of non-compliance, improper porch installation, mailbox deviation, potential noise disturbance, audio from Ring camera flagged. I almost laughed. They were using my own surveillance as ammunition. That meant one thing. Vivian was escalating fast, trying to force a reaction. But this time, I had documentation, procedures, precedent. I wasn't just any homeowner. I understood the paper trail better than they did. When I pulled up the HOA charter, the flaws jumped out. Half the violations she cited referenced amendments never ratified by the county. No record of community vote, no official filing. Amateur intimidation dressed up as governance. I sent everything to my private server. Emails, screenshots, timestamps, labeling it CR Evidence Set 2. Later that evening, Lila insisted on taking a short walk. She needed air, doctor's orders be damned. The sun hung low, orange over the manicured lawns. I walked beside her slowly, scanning the corners of the street where Vivian's house loomed, a pale giant with shutters that never opened. "Feels like everyone's watching?" she said quietly. She was right. Curtains shifted as we passed. Tanner's car sat in the driveway, bass thumping faintly from inside. I kept my eyes forward. Halfway down the block, a sprinkler system hissed to life, drenching us both without warning. The sensor wasn't motion activated. It was timed. But I saw the gate next door pull shut, and through the slats, Tanner's laugh again. "He's doing it on purpose," Lila said, wiping her face. I squeezed her hand gently. "Let him record it. Every action leaves a mark." When we got home, a fresh envelope was taped to the door. Noise complaint. Porch activity observed after sunset. Vivian's signature in thick ink. It was 7:42 p.m. Sunset wasn't until 8:03. She'd falsified the timestamp. That was her mistake. I scanned the document, then opened the security feed again. There she was, Vivian herself walking up, sliding the notice on my door more than 20 minutes early. A calculated lie, another weapon for her board. That night, as thunder rolled in over Cypress Ridge, I archived the footage and wrote my own report. Not to the HOA, not to the neighbors, to myself. A record of patterns, escalation, motive. I'd built hundreds of case files in my career, but none like this. This one was personal. I sat on the porch swing while Lila slept, letting the rain drum the roof. The swing creaked, steady, almost rhythmic. I thought about Whitaker, about the whispers from other houses. Fear only worked when people stayed divided. Vivian didn't realize it yet, but she'd just made the same mistake every abuser makes. She taught the quiet ones how to see her clearly. The rain had stopped by morning, but the ground still shimmered, puddles reflecting the pale blue trim of the clubhouse. I parked out front, violation notice folder under my arm, pretending this was just another day. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of polish and air freshener, the kind meant to mask rot. Vivian's office door stood half open. I didn't bother knocking. "Detective Harkins," she said, spinning in her chair like I was an inconvenience she could control. "You're early. Inspections aren't until next week." I ignored her and set the notice on her desk. "You falsified a timestamp. Let's not insult each other pretending otherwise." Her smile didn't falter. "If you're accusing the board of misconduct, file it in writing." I leaned forward slightly. "Already did." Behind her, someone dropped a clipboard. Grant Phelps, maintenance supervisor, gray polo, head down, stood frozen by the printer. He fumbled for a stack of papers, nearly spilling them. His eyes darted between us, then to the notice. "Morning, ma'am," he muttered, his voice too soft to interrupt, but too tense to ignore. Vivian waved him off. "Grant, take the maintenance logs to storage." He nodded quickly, but his hands trembled, the papers slipping once more before he caught them. Our eyes met for a second. I saw something there, fear mixed with guilt. When Vivian turned back to her screen, I took a deliberate step closer to Grant as he passed. "You keep system logs, right?" I asked, low enough she couldn't hear. He froze mid-step. A single muscle in his jaw twitched before he said, "Yes, sir." Then, even quieter. "Every camera, every access point." He looked down again. "They're supposed to auto-back up every 7 days." The way he said "supposed to" told me everything. Vivian's nails clicked on her keyboard, sharp and deliberate. "Is this conversation over, detective?" she asked without looking up. "For now," I said, turning toward the door. "But next time, I'll bring the rest of the department." Her chair squeaked behind me, that perfect posture slipping for just a breath. "You think you're special because you used to wear a badge?" she called after me. "This is a private association. We don't answer to you." I stopped halfway through the doorway. "No," I said, "but you'll answer to the law you're violating." Outside, the rain returned, softer now, steady against the roof. Grant followed a few steps behind, papers pressed tight to his chest like a shield. When we reached the maintenance shed, he lingered by the door, his breathing shallow. "She deletes them," he whispered. "The backups. Claims it's system cleanup. I've seen her do it." He ran a hand through his hair, damp from the drizzle. "I shouldn't even be telling you this." "Why do you stay?" I asked. He laughed once, bitter. "Mortgage, 2 kids, health insurance through the HOA. He stared down at his boots, water dripping from his sleeves. "You think I don't want to stop her? But you don't understand, sir. People who talk don't stay employed here." His fingers tapped against the clipboard in rhythm with his pulse. "Grant," I said carefully, "if she's deleting security data, that's tampering with evidence. If she's doing it after I filed a report, that's obstruction." He swallowed hard. "I know," he whispered. His eyes lifted just enough to meet mine again. There it was, the same flicker I'd seen in witnesses before they decided to testify. The war between fear and conscience. The shed door creaked open, revealing rows of cleaning supplies and a single monitor glowing in the corner. He hesitated at the threshold, glancing around like someone might be watching. "That one syncs to the vendor's cloud," he said finally. "I can't touch it without approval, but I might still have cached feeds before the last wipe." He rubbed his temple, pacing once. "If anyone finds out I told you, I'm done." "You won't be," I said. "You'll be the reason this place changes." He didn't answer. Instead, he stared at the ground, hands stuffed deep into his pockets, shoulders tight. Then he nodded once, barely visible, but enough. "Come back tonight," he muttered. "After she's gone." As I walked away, I looked back once through the rain. Grant was still there, standing under the flickering shed light, his body half turned like he wanted to run, but couldn't. That hesitation told me more than words ever could. He was scared, yes, but he was cracking, and when fear starts to crack, truth finds its way through. By the time night fell, the streetlights of Cypress Ridge flickered against the mist like tired sentries. I waited in my truck across from the clubhouse, headlights off, wipers rhythmically sweeping away drizzle. Grant had said to come after Vivian left, and her silver SUV finally rolled out at 9:13 p.m., taillights vanishing toward the north gate. The moment she cleared the roundabout, the clubhouse went dark except for one faint glow from the maintenance wing. I grabbed my flashlight and crossed the pavement quietly, the crunch of wet gravel echoing louder than I liked. Grant stood outside the maintenance shed, shoulders hunched beneath a thin jacket. He looked smaller under the buzzing light than he had earlier, like a man trying to make himself disappear. "She wiped the local drives again this afternoon," he said, voice rough. "But I think one camera didn't sync in time." He stepped aside to let me in. The air smelled of disinfectant and old paint. A monitor flickered weakly in the corner. The feed paused on a static frame of the HOA's west parking lot. I pulled the temp files before they cleared. "It's all time-stamped from the day your wife was harassed." I felt the pulse in my neck quicken. "How much did you see?" He hesitated, rubbing his hands together. "Enough. It's not just him yelling. He pushed her." His words came out like a confession and a curse. I didn't think it was my place to say anything, but watching her fall like that, he trailed off, shaking his head. "I got kids. I can't unsee that." He loaded the file onto a USB and set it on the table between us. His fingers lingered over it for a moment, trembling slightly. "If she finds out this exists, I'm done," he whispered. "You won't tell her where it came from?" I shook my head. "You have my word." The rain picked up again outside, hammering the metal roof. I pocketed the drive carefully. "Grant, this stays between us for now. I'll handle the chain of custody. You just keep your head down." He nodded, eyes darting toward the door. "You gonna go public?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "First, I need to see how far she's willing to go." When I left the shed, the air felt colder, heavier. I drove home slow, headlights cutting through fog curling off the lawns. Lila was asleep on the couch when I came in, the soft hum of the baby monitor filling the room. I watched her chest rise and fall, her hand resting over the small curve of her stomach. Every decision from here on had to protect that peace. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was evidence's last safeguard. By morning, Vivian struck back. 2 new violation notices appeared overnight, one citing unauthorized surveillance equipment, another claiming public disturbance after sunset. She was trying to bait me, to force a confrontation she could control. I didn't take it. I filed nothing, said nothing. Instead, I spent the day cross-referencing timestamps from Grant's clip against my own porch recordings. Every frame aligned perfectly. Vivian's son had shoved Lila at 2:17 p.m., and 20 minutes later, Vivian herself had arrived at the same location, checking the camera angles. That was her second mistake. Evidence tampering doesn't need deletion. It only needs intent. I drafted a preliminary statement for the county police, but I wasn't submitting it yet. Timing mattered. If I moved too early, she'd claim harassment. If I waited too long, she'd bury the trail. I needed her to act again, something verifiable. Late afternoon, I drove through the neighborhood, documenting the HOA's inspection team as they trespassed on lawns, phones out, flashlights clicking. The residents kept their curtains drawn. No one dared interfere. I parked near the playground, pretending to check my tire, when Tanner's car screeched around the bend. He leaned halfway out the window, phone in hand, recording. "Smile for the HOA newsletter, detective," he shouted. "Maybe your wife wants a cameo." The laughter that followed made my skin crawl. I said nothing, only raised my own phone and filmed him back. His face changed instantly, from mocking to startled. He hadn't expected someone who knew how to build evidence faster than he could delete it. That night, as I uploaded the new clips to my secure drive, I thought of Grant again, his shaking hands, the way his eyes followed every sound like someone expecting punishment. He'd taken a risk stepping forward, and Vivian would notice the missing footage soon. When she did, she'd start looking for the leak. I sat back in my chair, rubbing at the ache behind my eyes. Outside, thunder rolled over the neighborhood, low and steady. In the flicker of lightning, the porch swing rocked gently. Lila stirred upstairs. The world felt like it was holding its breath. She thought fear would make everyone stay silent. But fear only lasts until one person decides it's evidence. And tonight, I finally had enough to prove she'd built her little empire on lies. By dawn, the storm had passed, but the tension hadn't. The clouds hung low and bruised over Cypress Ridge as I drove toward the community's west parking lot, the same stretch where Tanner had cornered my wife. The asphalt still showed faint scuff marks from her fall. I parked at the edge, engine idling, and took a long breath. The footage Grant gave me had haunted my sleep. Tanner's shove, Lila's cry, Vivian's SUV pulling in minutes later like a vulture circling a carcass. That image, her bending to check the camera before driving away, was seared into me. Lila called just as I stepped out. Her voice was soft, tired. "You're not going to do anything dangerous, right?" she asked. "No," I said, just verifying a timeline. I didn't tell her the truth, that every instinct I had wanted to drag Tanner out by his collar. But this wasn't about rage anymore. It was about precision. I crossed to the nearest security post, a small metal booth behind the lot. Inside sat Ray, the contracted night guard, sipping coffee and half watching a tablet stream of the live feeds. His shoulders stiffened when I tapped the glass. "Detective Harkins," he said, sliding the window open an inch. "If this is about your wife again, I can't comment." "I'm not asking for comment," I said evenly. "Just access logs for last Thursday." He looked uneasy. "I can't. Mrs. Caraway gave strict orders." I pulled a folded document from my jacket, a printout of the HOA's own bylaw amendment. Section 8.3 allows any homeowner to review footage of an incident involving personal property damage or injury. That's you complying with policy, not defying it. He hesitated, eyes darting toward the cameras, then sighed. "She's gonna kill me for this." He turned the monitor, scrolling through entries. There it was, camera 12, West Lot, 2:17 p.m. The frame flickered, showing movement, Tanner's car, Lila stepping backward, his shove. But the feed abruptly cut to static. I pointed at the timestamp. "That gap? What happened?" Ray's throat bobbed. "She said system maintenance, but it only happens when she's on site." I left without another word, snapping photos of the monitor's reflection on my phone. Chain of custody mattered, even if it started with fragments. Back home, I uploaded the images beside Grant's file, cross-verifying metadata. Both feeds stopped within seconds of each other. Vivian's digital fingerprints were all over the timeline. She hadn't just covered up her son's assault, she'd orchestrated a deliberate erasure of community evidence. And that made it criminal. Lila met me at the door, her robe pulled tight, dark circles under her eyes. "Did you find something?" she asked. "Enough to make her panic," I said. "And that's exactly what I need." She frowned. "What do you mean?" I smiled faintly. "People like Vivian always overreach. All we have to do is let her." That afternoon, I took a walk down to the cul-de-sac where most of the neighbors gathered in quiet avoidance. Whitaker was trimming his hedges again. When he saw me, he paused, lowering his clippers. "Heard you went digging around the cameras," he said. "You're not the first to try." I leaned on the fence. "What happened to the others?" "They moved," he said simply. "One day they got fed up, next day for sale, sign out front. Nobody ever fights her." He looked at me then, eyes tired. "But maybe you're not like the rest." By dusk, a new email landed in my inbox, this time from Vivian herself. "Effective immediately, your access to HOA facilities is suspended pending review for misconduct." She had just handed me proof of retaliation. I printed the notice, dated and signed, then forwarded it to the county compliance office's complaint portal. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about sequence. When night fell, I sat in the truck outside the West Lot again, headlights off. Tanner's car rolled in, music pounding, headlights sweeping across the asphalt. He wasn't alone. Two friends stumbled out laughing. They cracked open beers and started mocking the porch swing. My wife, even the unborn baby. Every nerve in my body screamed to step out, but I waited. Then Tanner did it again. Walked to my wife's car, spat on the hood, and raised his phone, recording himself shouting, "For the HOA!" That was the final piece. My dash cam caught everything. Clear audio, clear video, time stamped. As I sat there watching the file upload to my off-site server, I realized the trap was already closing. Vivian thought she ruled this neighborhood through silence and signatures, but tonight, her silence was evidence, and I'd just turned her own rules into her undoing. The next morning, I didn't wake to sunlight, just the sound of tires crunching on gravel outside. Through the blinds, a dark SUV idled near my driveway. Vivian Caraway stepped out, dressed like she was headed to court, clipboard in hand and expression carved from marble. Two HOA board members followed behind her with phones raised, documenting. The knock came sharp and deliberate. "Detective Harkins," she called, voice falsely sweet. "You're in violation of community conduct, filming minors without consent, loitering in restricted areas, and verbal harassment toward board personnel." I opened the door halfway, camera already recording. "If you're referring to last night, your son trespassed on my property and vandalized my wife's vehicle. That's not loitering. That's evidence." Vivian smirked. "My son was conducting community patrol. We've filed a report for your aggression." She held up a paper, her nails tapping the header. "HOA disciplinary notice. Consider this your final warning." Behind her, the board members whispered, trying to look braver than they felt. I took a slow step forward. "You came to my door to intimidate me. That's witness tampering." Her expression flickered for the first time. "Are you threatening me, officer?" she snapped. "No," I said. "I'm informing you the County Compliance Division will be receiving this footage by noon." That wiped the smile from her face. She turned on her heel and marched off, shouting to the others, "Document this hostile behavior." Her voice cracked slightly at the end. That was new, cracks forming under her veneer of control. I closed the door, breathing out slowly. Lila was standing at the bottom of the stairs, hands on her belly, eyes wide. "She's losing it," she said softly. "Good," I answered. "That means she's scared." By 10 o'clock, the retaliation started. Our HOA access cards were deactivated. I couldn't enter the clubhouse gym. The front gate guard stopped me from passing until I cleared it with management. The emails came next, threats of fines, legal fees, even eviction under a clause for disruptive homeowners. Every message carried Vivian's digital signature, but instead of reacting, I logged them all, screenshot by screenshot, stacking a chain of retaliation longer than any HOA president could bury. Midday, I drove to the police precinct in town, off duty now, but still known. Captain Reddick met me in the hallway, arms crossed. "Cole," he said, "you're supposed to be retired, not starting wars with homeowner boards." I slid the USB across his desk. "Then tell me if this looks like a war or obstruction of justice." He watched the footage, Tanner's shove, Vivian inspecting cameras, the time-stamp gaps, and finally, the parking lot stunt from last night. His jaw tightened. "You got chain of custody for all this?" "Every second," I said. "Backup stored off-site, multiple redundancies." Reddick leaned back, rubbing his chin. "All right, I'll forward this to the county compliance investigator in the DA's office. But, Cole, once this starts, it doesn't stop. She'll go for your throat." "She already did," I said. "Now it's my turn to do this by the book." When I stepped back outside, the clouds had lifted into sharp blue. For the first time in weeks, the air didn't feel suffocating. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. An unknown number, I answered. "You shouldn't have gone to them," a voice said. "Tanner. You think anyone's going to believe a washed-up cop over us?" I hit record before he finished. "You called me," I said calmly. "That's harassment. Keep talking." There was silence, then a muttered curse before the line went dead. That call was the final thread I needed. Direct intimidation tied to the ongoing complaint. By the time I reached my house, I'd already attached the audio to the incident report and emailed it to Reddick. Outside, the neighborhood felt quieter than usual, blinds drawn tighter than before. People knew something was coming. Grant texted me at sunset. She's been in the office all afternoon deleting files. I heard her tell Tanner, "It's too late, they've already seen it." My reply was simple. Back up what you can and stay clear tonight. I stepped onto the porch, the swing creaking gently under the wind. Lila joined me, resting her head on my shoulder. "Is it over?" she asked. "Not yet," I said, "but she's cornered." In the distance, a siren wailed. Not urgent, just passing, but it felt like an omen. The balance had shifted. Vivian thought her threats could drown me, but she forgot something fundamental. I didn't need to scare her. I only needed to let the law see her clearly. And starting tomorrow, they would. The next morning, my phone buzzed before sunrise. Unknown number again, but this time, it wasn't Tanner. The voice was shaky, hushed. "Detective, it's Grant. I can't do this anymore." He hung up before I could respond. I was out the door 5 minutes later, heading for the maintenance shed at the far edge of the property. The air was heavy with dew, and the streetlights still burned pale yellow against the fog. When I reached the shed, the door was ajar. Grant sat inside at a folding table, his jacket soaked through, hair plastered to his forehead. A half-empty thermos sat beside a hard drive wrapped in plastic. His eyes flicked to me and then to the door. "She knows," he said quietly. "Vivian knows I pulled that footage. She came in yesterday asking about missing backups. I told her it was a system glitch, but she didn't believe me." I stepped inside, closing the door behind us. "What did she do?" His fingers tapped against the metal tabletop, uneven, frantic. "She called corporate, said she wanted the vendor to purge all retained footage from the cloud. I overheard her say permanent deletion. That means the original files are gone by the end of today." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I can't sleep, man. I've got 2 kids. If she finds out I'm the one who copied it, I'm finished." I leaned forward. "Grant, listen, you didn't commit a crime. You preserved evidence of one. That's the difference." He looked up, eyes rimmed red. "You think the law will protect me? The law doesn't pay my mortgage." He pulled the plastic-wrapped drive closer and pushed it across the table. "But maybe this will." I unwrapped it slowly. The label read, "CR Cam, Master Backup 0217. "This has the originals?" I asked. He nodded. "Everything from that week, the push, the after footage, even the part where she tells the guards to purge it. I didn't mean to copy it. I was just trying to save the system from crashing. But when I saw her covering it up, I couldn't unsee it." His breathing hitched as he continued. "She used to be decent, you know. Before her husband died, she was just another neighbor. Then she took over the board, and everything became control. She's been threatening residents with foreclosure for years, using old bylaws that were never even approved." He looked up at me again. "I thought it was just paperwork, until your wife got hurt." I slid the drive into my jacket pocket carefully. "You did the right thing. You know what this means?" He gave a short, hollow laugh. "It means I'll be unemployed by noon." "It means she's finished," I said. A loud bang outside made him flinch. A car door. He peeked through the slats. "That's her," he whispered. "She's here early." I looked through the crack beside him. Vivian's SUV parked crooked beside the curb, headlights still on. She was walking fast, phone pressed to her ear. "She's calling someone," Grant said. "Probably Tanner." "Then we don't have much time," I said. "You leave first. Take a different exit. Go straight home and don't answer her calls. I'll handle the rest." He hesitated, shaking his head. "No, you don't get it. She'll know it was me." "Grant," I said firmly, "once this hits the county database, no one's touching you. You'll be protected." He swallowed hard, then stood. His hands shook as he reached for the door, hesitated, and looked back one last time. "Detective," he said, voice low but steady, "there's something else you need to know. The board isn't just her. She's got the treasurer and secretary on payroll. They sign whatever she writes. But the financial records, I've seen them. She's been using HOA funds to pay Tanner's legal settlements. There's a whole ledger hidden in her office." That landed like thunder. "You're sure?" "Every dollar," he said. "She calls them community security disbursements." "It's all there." I gripped his shoulder. "Then this is bigger than harassment. It's fraud." He gave a tiny nod, eyes glistening. "Just make sure it matters, all right?" Then he slipped out the back door, disappearing into the fog. Seconds later, Vivian's heels clicked against the pavement outside the shed. I heard her voice sharp and cutting through the air. "Grant, are you in there?" I turned off the light and stepped deeper into the shadows. My pulse was steady now, focused. I had her recorded falsifying violations, covering up an assault, and now, thanks to Grant, evidence of financial crimes. The moment she opened that door, everything she thought she controlled would start collapsing, and she wouldn't even realize the law was already watching her. Vivian's voice outside the shed was sharp and close. "Grant, if you're in there, you'd better start explaining why the server logs show unauthorized access." I stayed in the shadow behind the shelves, holding my breath. Her heels clacked against the concrete as she stepped inside, muttering curses under her breath. The fluorescent light flicked on, buzzing faintly. She scanned the room, eyes narrowing, then kicked a stray mop bucket. "Pathetic," she hissed, before storming back out. The sound of her SUV door slamming echoed through the lot. I waited another minute, then slipped out through the back exit. My phone vibrated. A text from Grant. "She's gone. I'm out of the neighborhood. Do what you have to do." I type back quickly. "You did your part. Stay with your kids tonight." Then I started the drive into town, the plastic-wrapped hard drive sitting on the passenger seat like a loaded weapon. The county police evidence lab was quiet at this hour. Officer Langford, the tech on duty, looked up as I walked in. "Detective Harkins," he said, recognizing me immediately. "You're supposed to be retired." "Yeah," I replied, setting the drive on the counter. "So, let's call this a favor for the system that still works." He raised an eyebrow, but plugged the drive in without another word. The data tree bloomed across the monitor, folder after folder of camera feeds, timestamps, and encrypted archive files. I leaned forward. "Pull up February 17th, 2 p.m., West Parking Lot." Langford clicked through. The footage opened with static, then clarity. Lila walking across the lot, sunlight catching her hair. Tanner's car, pulling in fast. His friends laughing from the passenger side. The shove, her fall. My pulse tightened, but I didn't look away. "Freeze there," I said. He paused the frame. "Now check the logs." Langford opened the metadata panel. "Deleted manually 36 minutes later," he said. "User access, V. Caraway admin." "Run a checksum comparison," I said. He typed rapidly, then looked up. "There's an unaltered shadow copy, archived automatically by the vendor. Grant must have cloned the original files before she deleted them." He glanced over his shoulder. "You realize what this is, right? This isn't a civil issue anymore. This is criminal obstruction." I nodded slowly. Exactly what I needed confirmed. Langford sat back, exhaling. "You want this logged officially?" I shook my head. "Not yet. I'm submitting it through Captain Reddick first thing tomorrow. Chain of custody stays airtight until then." He transferred the files to an evidence disk, sealed and stamped it, then handed me the report sheet. "You sure you're ready for what comes next?" he asked. "She's got money, lawyers, friends on the city council." "I've handled worse," I said, tucking the disc inside my jacket. "And this time, I've got truth on record." By the time I got home, the street was still and dark. Lila was sitting on the porch swing, wrapped in a blanket. "I couldn't sleep," she said softly. "Did you find what you needed?" I sat beside her, the swing creaking under our combined weight. "Yeah," I said. "It's over for her now. She just doesn't know it yet." Lila leaned against me, eyes closing. "Promise me you'll let the law handle it?" I smiled faintly. "That's the plan." The next morning, before sunrise, my phone buzzed again, this time from Reddick. "Bring everything. DA's office wants a meeting." When I arrived, the district attorney's conference room was already humming. Reddick stood at the end of the table, arms folded. "You made waves," he said quietly as I entered. I set the evidence disc on the table. "Then let's make sure they crash in the right direction." The DA, a stern woman with tired eyes, leaned forward. "Mr. Harkins, this footage you've provided shows a deliberate cover-up. We'll issue subpoenas for the HOA's financials, security logs, and all board communications." She tapped a pen on the folder in front of her. "If this ties to the funding misuse your witness mentioned, it becomes a federal matter." Grant's name flickered across my mind, his shaking hands, his voice cracking as he said, "Just make sure it matters." "It will," I said quietly. When I walked out into the morning light, the first rays breaking over the courthouse steps, I finally felt something I hadn't in months. Momentum. Vivian's empire had built itself on silence and paperwork. Now, every document, every file, every timestamp she tried to erase was lined up against her. I looked at the sealed envelope in my hand, stamped with the DA's insignia, and allowed myself a rare smile. The law was officially in motion. The house she built on fear had just been handed to justice, piece by piece. By the next day, the ripples had already reached Cypress Ridge. Word spread faster than I expected. Board members whispering, neighbors lingering longer by their mailboxes, security patrols suddenly less confident. Vivian's SUV hadn't moved all morning, parked outside the clubhouse like a stranded monument to authority. I watched from my truck across the street, waiting for Reddick's call. The DA's office had accepted the evidence package, but I needed one more move to corner her publicly, something she couldn't spin as bias or retaliation. That's when the county compliance officer arrived, A white sedan with county plates rolled to a stop beside the clubhouse. Out stepped Inspector Lyons, clipboard in hand, accompanied by a uniformed deputy. They walked up the steps calmly. No sirens, no spectacle, just quiet inevitability. I followed at a distance, phone camera recording from waist height. The glass door swung open, and Vivian met them halfway, her tone brittle. "You can't just barge in here," she said. "This is private property." Lyons didn't even blink. Under Statute 1241, all incorporated homeowners associations fall under county oversight when allegations of financial misconduct arise. "You've been served with an inspection notice, Mrs. Caraway." Her smile cracked, though she tried to hide it. "There must be some mistake. Our records are clean." "Then it'll be quick," Lyons replied, stepping past her. Through the windows, I could see them moving through the office, opening drawers, logging computers. I waited by the walkway until Vivian finally emerged, her voice shaking with forced confidence. "I know this has your fingerprints all over it, detective," she spat. "You think you can ruin me with doctored footage and jealous neighbors?" I kept my voice even. "No, Vivian, you did that yourself." She leaned closer, her perfume cloying in the heat. "You don't understand who I know. One phone call, and this entire investigation disappears." I smiled faintly. "You've made a lot of calls lately. Problem is, the law keeps records of those too." Her phone buzzed. She glanced down, and whatever she saw made the color drain from her face. Inside the office, Lyons and the deputy were carrying out 2 boxes of documents sealed in evidence bags. By the time I got home, half the neighborhood was outside, people talking in small, cautious clusters. Whitaker crossed the street, hands stuffed in his jacket. "They're saying she's being investigated for fraud," he whispered. "Is it true?" I nodded. "She's been using HOA funds for personal expenses and to pay her son's legal bills. County's confirming everything now." His mouth opened slightly. "You're really doing it, aren't you?" "Not me," I said. "Just the truth doing its job." That night, I received a message from Grant. They raided her home office, found multiple ledgers. "I'm in protective review until it's over." Relief hit like cold air. I typed back, "You're safe now. You did the right thing." Around midnight, my porch camera pinged, motion detected. I checked the feed and saw Tanner's car pull up across the street. He sat there for a minute, headlights off, just staring at the house. I turned the camera angle wider. He got out, looked around, and then nothing. He didn't approach, didn't shout. Just stood there, arms folded, like a man watching everything he'd taken for granted fall apart. I didn't move to confront him. I didn't have to. For the first time, he looked small. The next morning, official notices went out to all residents. The county had temporarily suspended the HOA's operations pending a full audit. A community vote was scheduled within 30 days to elect a new board. My inbox flooded with messages, some grateful, some stunned. Even the ones who'd stayed silent were suddenly finding their voices again. Lila stepped onto the porch as the sun broke through the clouds. She was holding the morning paper, headline bold across the front. "Cypress Ridge HOA under investigation for fraud, evidence tampering." She smiled, the first real smile I'd seen in months. "It's everywhere," she said. "She can't hide anymore." I took her hand, watching the neighborhood slowly wake up. The same people who once avoided eye contact now nodded, waved, even stopped to talk. Fear had loosened its grip. The porch swing creaked gently behind us, as if reclaiming its place. Vivian thought she ruled this place with signatures and silence, but paper burns and silence breaks. Now, with the county involved and her own files turned against her, the world she built was unraveling in public view, and all I had to do was let gravity finish what justice had started. The notice for the emergency community assembly came 2 days later. Plain white envelopes slid into every mailbox. The meeting would take place at the town hall instead of the HOA clubhouse, a quiet admission that the board had lost control. I arrived early, the air outside sharp with the scent of rain and cut grass. Through the tall windows, I could already see residents filing in, their voices low and uneasy. On the front table sat the county seal and 3 officials from the compliance division. Vivian Caraway stood off to the side, pale but defiant, clutching a binder like it was armor. Tanner sat behind her, slouched and glaring at his phone. I took a seat near the back beside Whitaker, who looked both nervous and vindicated. "You sure about this?" he whispered. "Once it starts, there's no undoing it." I nodded. "That's the point." The hum of voices grew until the room was full. When the compliance officer stepped forward, the place went silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "today's session concerns the financial and procedural conduct of the Cypress Ridge Homeowners Association and its governing board." She turned toward Vivian. "Mrs. Caraway, you may speak first." Vivian straightened, smoothing her blazer. "I've served this community for 8 years. These accusations are absurd. Every action I've taken was for the betterment of Cypress Ridge. Any discrepancies are clerical errors." She tried to sound composed, but her voice wavered on that last line. "Furthermore," she continued, "Detective Harkins has pursued a personal vendetta since day one, weaponizing his position to harass my family." She turned toward me, eyes flashing. "You've manipulated this entire neighborhood into fear." I stood slowly. "No, Vivian, you did that yourself." I walked toward the center of the aisle, the eyes of every neighbor tracking me. "This isn't about vendettas. This is about accountability." I placed a sealed envelope on the table beside the compliance officer. "Inside are verified copies of financial ledgers obtained from your home office, showing funds misappropriated from the HOA's maintenance account to your son's legal retainer and vehicle repairs." Vivian's composure fractured. "That's confidential," she snapped. "Illegally obtained, probably fabricated." The officer didn't even glance up. "The ledgers were retrieved under court-issued warrant," she said evenly. "They've been authenticated." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Tanner shifted uncomfortably, jaw tightening. I took another step forward. "This community trusted you. You fined people for flower pots, for mailbox paint, for porch furniture, while your son harassed neighbors and you deleted the proof. You wanted control, not order." I could feel the tension building, the kind that lives between silence and outrage. "But the truth doesn't bend, Vivian. It waits." The compliance officer nodded toward the technician setting up a projector. "Play the footage." The lights dimmed, and the familiar scene flickered onto the wall. Tanner's car pulling into the west lot. Lila's startled step back, his shove, the fall. Gasps filled the room. When the image froze, you could hear a pin drop. Then came the final clip, Vivian arriving minutes later, turning to the camera and giving the order to delete it. Vivian's voice trembled. "This is a violation of privacy. That footage was stolen." The officer replied calmly, "Under state law, all HOA-managed surveillance is considered community property. The residents have every right to see this." I looked around the room. Neighbors who'd avoided me for months now stared at Vivian with disgust and disbelief. Whitaker whispered, "She's finished." The officer cleared her throat. "Effective immediately, the Cypress Ridge HOA board is suspended pending full audit and re-election. Mrs. Caraway, you are under investigation for obstruction of justice and embezzlement." Vivian's knees gave out slightly. Tanner grabbed her arm, but she pulled away, eyes wild. "You think you can destroy me with paperwork?" she screamed. "This neighborhood wouldn't exist without me." No one answered. Even her allies looked down, ashamed. As deputies approached, she turned toward me one last time. "You're a cop. You're supposed to protect people like me." I met her gaze. "I do, just not from consequences." When they let her out, the room stayed quiet for several seconds. Then someone started clapping. It spread, slowly at first, then louder, filling the hall until the walls seemed to shake. Whitaker stood beside me, tears in his eyes. "You did it," he said. "No," I said quietly, watching the porch swing sway in my memory. "We all did." Outside, the rain began again, soft and clean. For the first time, Cypress Ridge didn't feel suffocating. It felt free. 2 weeks later, the county courthouse overflowed with people. Residents from every corner of Cypress Ridge packed the benches, whispering, shifting, craning their necks toward the front. The press had caught the scent. 2 local news vans idled outside, antennas pointed skyward. The air smelled faintly of rain and electricity, that strange mix of justice and spectacle. I took my seat near the center, Lila beside me, her hand resting on the curve of her stomach. She was calm now, stronger than I'd ever seen her. The porch swing, once a symbol of peace under siege, had turned into a monument of endurance. At the front table sat Vivian Caraway, her attorney whispering frantically into her ear. Her posture was stiff, but the confidence was gone. The red of her blazer couldn't hide the tremor in her fingers. Tanner sat behind her again, eyes dark, shoulders slumped. A man who'd finally realized the world wasn't built to clean up his messes forever. The county compliance officer adjusted the microphone and looked across the sea of faces. This public hearing has been called to finalize the review of the Cypress Ridge Homeowners Association, she said. All findings will be entered into record today. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Whitaker leaned forward behind me, whispering, "You think she'll speak?" I didn't answer. Vivian always spoke. Silence wasn't in her nature. And, sure enough, she rose. "Before you read your verdict," she said, voice amplified through the small speakers, "I have something to say." She stepped forward, eyes scanning the room. "You've all known me for years. I kept this neighborhood beautiful, orderly, safe. Maybe I made mistakes, but everything I did was to preserve this community." Her tone cracked halfway through the word, preserve. She turned toward me. "Detective Harkins destroyed that. He made you all believe I was a villain." The audience murmured, uneasy. I stood. "You did that yourself, when you forgot the difference between leadership and ownership." Vivian's lawyer tugged her sleeve, but she shook him off. "You humiliated me in front of my neighbors, my son," she shouted, "all because your wife couldn't mind her place." The gasp that followed was collective. Even Tanner muttered something under his breath, slumping lower. The compliance officer slammed her gavel. "Enough, Mrs. Caraway." The officer turned to the projector. "For the record, the county has verified a pattern of embezzlement, evidence destruction, and retaliatory conduct under your administration. You exploited your position for personal benefit, falsified citations, and attempted to obstruct investigation." The screen came to life behind her. Emails, bank statements, timestamps, Vivian's signature glowing like a confession. "These findings are now public record. The board is dissolved, and you, Mrs. Caraway, are referred to the district attorney for criminal prosecution." Vivian's face drained of color. The crowd erupted, some clapping, some shouting, some just stunned. A camera flash went off from the side aisle, followed by another. Tanner stood suddenly, hands shaking. "This isn't fair," he yelled. "She did what everyone else does. HOA presidents bend rules all the time." The compliance officer looked at him coolly. "Not when those rules endanger others, Mr. Caraway." That was when Whitaker spoke from the back, his voice clear and trembling with conviction. "You fined me for a garden hose, Vivian. $200 for a hose, while your son was out here terrorizing people." Applause broke out. Another neighbor added, "You threatened foreclosure over a mailbox color." Then another, "You said my disabled mother's wheelchair ramp violated design standards." The wave built fast, decades of quiet frustration breaking into sound. Vivian tried to shout over them, but the noise swallowed her words. I didn't join in. I just watched her face crumble as the crowd took back the voice she'd stolen. The deputies moved in quietly, standing near the door, not to arrest her yet, but to make sure she didn't flee. Lila reached over and squeezed my hand. "It's over," she whispered. When the gavel fell again, the noise slowly faded. The compliance officer spoke one last time. "Order will be restored through new elections within 60 days. The HOA will be placed under provisional management until then." She looked out over the residents. "This community belongs to you now. Use it wisely." As Vivian was escorted out, a reporter leaned in with a microphone. "Detective Harkins," she asked, "how does it feel seeing this end here, in public?" I paused before answering. "It doesn't end here," I said quietly. "It ends when people remember they don't owe fear to anyone who pretends to lead." And for the first time, since all this began, the crowd didn't look afraid anymore. They looked free. The week after the hearing, Cypress Ridge looked unrecognizable. The heavy silence that used to hang over every porch was gone, replaced by the sound of neighbors finally talking again. The lawn still gleamed, but now the perfection wasn't enforced. It was chosen. I drove through slowly that morning, windows down, breathing in the faint scent of wet soil after an overnight rain. For the first time since we'd moved here, the place actually felt like home. Vivian's house sat dark and empty behind a realtor's sign. Her SUV had been impounded days earlier, and county records confirmed she'd surrendered her position under court order. Tanner had left town too. The Caraway name that once ruled every HOA meeting had become a warning instead of a badge. People walked their dogs again without glancing over their shoulders. Kids rode bikes through the cul-de-sac without fear of fines. And for the first time in years, laughter carried through the streets. The following Saturday, the community held an informal gathering. No votes, no agenda, just coffee and peace. The temporary HOA liaison from the county, a soft-spoken woman named Jenkins, asked me to say a few words. I didn't plan a speech. I stood by the same bench where Lila had sat the day Vivian handed us that first violation notice and just spoke the truth. Every community gets tested, I said. Ours failed for a while. We let fear pretend it was order. But when people remember they have a voice, that's when justice starts showing up. Applause rippled gently, not loud, not performative, just real. Whitaker clapped first, his eyes glassy. Then others joined in. Jenkins smiled. "We're electing a new board next month," she said. "You'd make a fine candidate, detective." I shook my head. "No," I said, glancing at Lila. "We came here for quiet. I think we've earned it." Later that evening, I sat on the porch swing, the same one that had started it all. The chain still creaked faintly, that familiar rhythm like a heartbeat, steadying after chaos. Lila sat beside me, cradling a mug of tea, her other hand resting protectively over her belly. "It feels different now," she said. "Like the air's lighter." I nodded. "Because the weight's gone." Across the street, neighbors were stringing up lights for a block party, something Vivian had once banned for being disruptive. Kids ran in circles chasing bubbles, their laughter rising with the music. Whitaker was setting up a grill, his grandkids helping him unwrap hot dog buns. The sight pulled a smile out of me that felt earned. Lila turned to me, her voice soft. "You ever regret not walking away when it started?" I thought about it. The sleepless nights, the violation notices, the fear in her eyes when Tanner shoved her. "No," I said finally, "because walking away would have taught them that power belongs to whoever shouts the loudest. I needed to show them that power belongs to whoever refuses to back down." The swing swayed as a warm breeze rolled through. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You didn't just protect us," she whispered. "You changed this place." I looked out at the lights, the people laughing, the soft glow reflecting off the wet pavement. "Maybe," I said. But all I really did was give the truth somewhere to stand. Inside, my phone buzzed. A notification from the county clerk. Official statement, HOA audit closed. Community transferred to resident-led management. I stared at it for a long second, then handed it to Lila. She smiled through tears. "It's done," she said. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly, feeling something in my chest unclench for the first time in months. The night air carried the sound of someone strumming a guitar down the block. No more threats, no more notices taped to the door. Just peace, hard-earned and real. As the lights flickered on one by one across the neighborhood, I looked into the camera I'd mounted on the porch railing, now not for evidence, just for memory, and hit record. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from. Then I turned the camera off and pulled Lila closer. The baby kicked once under her hand, gentle but strong, like a promise. Somewhere behind us, the porch swing creaked again, and for the first time since we built it, it didn't sound like defiance. It sounded like freedom,